Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Friday, February 21st, 2020. Take a look at our solar wind speeds coming in at 477.0 kilometers per second with a density of 2.2. Reporting 0 sunspots once again on the sun. That is now 19 straight days without sunspots and 35 for 2020. That gives us a 67% of 2020 without sunspots. And let's take a look at space weather section here at the grandsolarminimum.com. KP indices have been bouncing back and forth between a 2 and a 3. Our 24-hour max is at a 4. And let's go ahead and take a look and see if we have any sunspots on the horizon. And the answer is no. Right now we have nothing. It's pretty quiet. So solar minimum conditions will continue to thrive at this moment. And if anything, we have a few bright regions in the southern hemisphere of the sun, which indicates that we are starting to see cycle 25 sunspots. But as of right now, we're quiet, no coronal holes to mention, no sunspots to report. Like I said, that's 67% of 2020 right now without sunspots on the year. And let's take one more look at the space weather station. Cosmic rays are down to 9.6% after being so far at 11.4%, which is a 2020 high thus far. Season is not over. Still chances for us to break the space age record of 11.7% on cosmic rays. So, all right, let's take a look at a few articles, shall we? First, let's take a look here. Severe winter storm hits Norway with heavy snow resulting in at least 2 fatalities. A severe winter storm hit Norway this week, dumping heavy snow and causing travel and power disruptions across the country. Dozens of people were left stranded on closed roads, and at least 2 people lost their lives after an avalanche hit off the country's north mainland on Thursday, February 20th, 2020. At least 70 people were trapped at European Route E134 near a mountain area and a mountain pass in southern Norway. About 7 to 10 feet of snow fell on the area. E134 is the most significant transport link between Haugesund and Oslo. The road was closed for almost a week, and as well as several other places across the south and central Norway. Meanwhile, in the Svalbard archipelago sits about 500 miles north of Norwegian mainland. 2 people died in an avalanche on the Friggebøbreen Glacier on Thursday, February 20th. The victims were identified as German nationals who were part of a tour organized by Russia firm Arctic travel company Grummet. A helicopter and avalanche dog were promptly deployed to the remote islands for retrieval operations. However, the helicopter was unable to land because of poor weather conditions. 2 other guides and 3 tourists were unharmed, said officials. According to Life in Norway, the national warning service Varsum.no stated that the avalanche risk in the area was currently at a moderate status. A meteorologist said there's no surprise if an avalanche has occurred based on recent snowfall and windy weather. And check this out, folks, a comparison of before and after photos here, just days before this snowfall. Look at this. Just your average old nice day, right? And then now look at the snowstorm. People are buried. I mean, their cars are buried in the snow. 7 to 10 feet will do that, guys. Wow. Taking a look at another article from Watchers.news. Severe thunderstorms strike New South Wales, disrupting power to 80,000 homes in Australia. This happened on Tuesday, February 18th. Lightning hit a whopping 800,000 times across the entire state, while 74,000 strikes hit Sydney, resulting in 1 death. According to the utility company Ausgrid, the intense lightning storm left about 80,000 properties without power. As of 10 UTC on Thursday, February 20th, less than 1,000 customers are still without power, but most are expected to be back on in the evening. Crews continue making good progress restoring power to customers impacted by Tuesday's severe storms. We've restored around 79,000 customers since Tuesday, claims Ausgrid. The company added that repairs for about 50 customers will go into Friday, February 21st. This may look like an angry Pac-Man, but this is the lightning map from last night's 74,000 strikes between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m. within 100 kilometers of Sydney. Power has been safely restored to more than 80% of the affected customers, with less than 14,000 out at 2 p.m. The phenomenon tragically caused one fatality in Sydney, identified as a 37-year-old man named Hung Leong. Strong winds from the storm blew away a gas bottle that hit the victim, which was described by authorities a rare accident. Leong was reportedly hit on his way home, walking along the Harrington Street in the Rocks when the freak accident occurred. Police arrived on scene promptly, as well as medics who performed CPR, but Leong was eventually declared dead at the St. Vincent's Hospital. We just need to know what happened to this fellow, said where the bottle came from. It's come from a very great height, said the Detective Inspector David L. Badawa. As he's walking, it hit him right side of the shoulder and he went down to the floor, according to this inspector. This is a very, very unusual circumstance. It's a complete tragedy. So a freak accident due to high winds from this storm here in Australia. Lots of footage here on the Watchers. Guys, go ahead and check out watchers.news for the footage. We used to show a lot of these videos, but sometimes we get hit with copyright strikes because somebody else's material. Even though we're just reporting on it, doing fair use media, we still get busted for it. So go ahead and check out those over there at watchers.news. China and India rejecting renewables for coal-fired futures. This is interesting. Off of what's up with that? China and India are not buying into the global alarm movement. Never in human history have we seen two countries, China and India, each with over 1 billion people in need of such large amounts of energy to keep their economies accelerating and their citizens alive. China and India are the two most populous countries in the world. As of 2018, China had almost 1.4 billion people, a figure that is projected to grow to 1.5 by 2045. India accounted for approximately 1.3 billion people in 2018, is expected to grow to 1.7 by 2045. Though China has spent more on clean energy than any other country and is pushing to burn natural gas instead of coal to counter smog, it's still pumping money at home and abroad into coal-fired generation. Now, Bloomberg reports that China has enough coal-fired power plants in the pipeline to match the entire capacity of the European Union, driving the expansion in global coal power and confounding the movement against the polluting fossil fuel. Over half of the world's coal power plants are in China. India, whose populations of mostly poor people is roughly 2.7 billion. Together, they are in the process of building 634 new coal plants. They are putting the money and backs into the most of their abundant source of energy, coal. Currently, 2 out of every 7 people in our planet are Chinese or Indian. Both countries desperate for energy and are rejecting renewables for coal-fired plants. Why are they rejecting renewables? Because these people over here know that renewable energies are not going to be enough to provide the power needed for the 2.7 billion people who live between those two countries. That's not a coincidence, folks. They are not following Germany's failed climate goals, which should be a wake-up call for all governments everywhere. Germany's obsession with the intermittent wind and solar has resulted in power prices that are now the highest in Europe, if not the world, for those Germans who are lucky enough to be supplied with it. How these two countries use energy is obviously of great importance to the world emission levels, since coal is the dirtiest form of scalable, reliable, affordable, and abundant energy currently available to billions in the developing world. The International Energy Association shows that CO2 emissions in 2019 outside advanced economies like China and India are growing. China isn't embracing this Green New Deal. The president Chinese has touted his country's transition to clean carbon-free energy and electricity from renewables, but the facts show much different energy reality. China accounts for roughly half of the world's coal consumption. Tom Steyer, the same guy that wants to claim a national climate crisis, and obliterate the fossil fuel industry in America is the same guy that made his billions financing coal-fired power plants around the world. For more than 15 years, Mr. Steyer's fund, Farallon Capital Management, pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into companies that operate coal mines and coal-fired power plants from Indonesia to China for some of the largest coal-fired power plants in India, locking in decades of carbon pollution. Shockingly, the U.S. could literally turn off an entire country from any source of energy, and global emissions would still grow to U.S. congressional testimony in 2017. The entire U.S. economy, military, and government could disappear, and global pollution and respiratory illness would still rise. The reason why is one of the biggest sources of carbon dioxide emissions is developing countries. Think China, India, and Africa. China and India are placing themselves on the opposite end of the energy spectrum by continuing year after year to import and burn tankers full of coal, oil, natural gas from countries that are authoritarian on human rights abusers and that couldn't care less about carbon emissions. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, Iraq, Nigeria, Angola, and Algeria. The quest for energy is how India and China will struggle for power in the 21st century. Both countries will not accept the threat of global warming or even deterring their growth. Both governments and their economies have militaries and billions of people who are hungry. Both China and India view energy as a normal source of power that is to be used for survival and advancement during this century. The rest of the world should take careful note. And I couldn't agree more with that comment and this article here, and I wanted to share that to you guys here from What's Up With That by Ronald Stein. Again, guys, they have the biggest populations. They're one of the biggest industrialized countries in the world. They put out the most emissions, and yet they are still rejecting the idea that they are contributing to man-made climate change. And look, we all know when you study the grand solar minimum, how many Chinese dynasties have fallen during grand solar minimums. And that's part of the reason why folks in China realize that man cannot start or stop climate change, that this has been happening since the beginning of record keeping in China. So again, people need to pay attention here and, quit blaming the United States and their combustible engines and planes and trains and whatever. There's countries out there that are just flat out refusing to go along with this Paris Treaty climate agreement. They're not buying the hoax. And here's some more fake news for you. Why do I call this fake news? NASA images show dramatic melting during Antarctica's heat wave. By the way, there was a temperature reading of 65 degrees in Antarctica that was on the tip, almost on the same latitude as that you would see of Melbourne, Australia. Now, why am I showing this tonight? There's so many people that think that the poles are melting. And shame on weather.com for sensationalizing a typical season that we see with the ice retreats, folks. I'll give you an example. In Antarctica, southern hemisphere, this is their end of winter end of the peak of summer, right before they head into their autumn. All right. Here is what the ice looks like in February of 2019 on the left and 2019 September on the right. On the right is the peak. On the left is the minimum ice because of what time of the year it is. We are in summertime right here, guys. We are in peak of winter right here, folks. So they're basically reporting, and it's February 21st. This is February of 2019. All right. So what we're seeing on weather.com is the same thing that we should see. In fact, Antarctica actually had a lot more snow and ice. This is February 3rd, and now this is after on the 13th. Right here's the 13th. This was the 3rd. So this is nothing dramatic. There's nothing to sound the alarm. It happens at both poles. Here's my example of that. Check out. This is September the summer minimum ice. This was from 2019. Looks pretty scary, right? Lots of water up here. What are we going to do? Ice caps are melting, right? No, this is what happens in this time of the year. Here is the current look at our ice. Yeah, it's full. But you don't see us over here at GSM reporting, oh my God, the ice is growing, it's cold, I told you so, grand solar minimum. No, this is the time of the year where we see the most ice in the Arctic. We had some rapid growth because even the shills over here at the, what do you call this? The NCIDC. Look at their headline. Instead of talking about, on February 4th, instead of talking about record-breaking sea ice in the Arctic right now, a mostly ho-hum January. Yep. We're not growing ice as fast as we should. That's what they want to tell you. But then you look at current ice conditions, and they look pretty normal right now to me. But you don't see us over here talking about ice age and GSM closing in because of the ice that's at its peak right now, like it should be. Just like in Antarctica, it should be low. This is the time of the year it retreats. And guess what? It's going to start growing again here in the next several months. But it's just to show you here, these mainstream media outlets will go to any extent to try to deceive you and trick you into thinking that you're looking at a result of climate change. Guys, listen, climate change is when your climate changes. Okay, and that means right now it's summer. So if it's climate change, it should be cold down there, right? Same with the Arctic. If we have climate change going on, shouldn't we be warm at the Arctic right now? Shouldn't we be melting ice if this is climate change? There's nothing changing about the climate. We're getting extreme weather events, but these happen in cycles. So I really hate, first they said, well, let's call it global warming. And then they found out they couldn't prove global warming. Now they're calling it climate change. But pretty soon, people like me and others will start saying, well, it's not really climate change, because climate change means that the climate in this region is changing to something else. This is typical climate right now. We just have some extreme anomalies that happen in between. So I'm here tonight just to kind of point out that mainstream media has a way of playing tricks, and they want to exaggerate and beat the fear drum of melting. Hello, 65 degrees on February 6th. Watch out. Notice they don't talk about the average temperature that was happening during this so-called heat wave. They won't mention that. They're saying that the region is warmer by 4.5 degrees Fahrenheit since 1950 years. So in 70 years, we've seen about what? Almost 2 degrees Celsius warmth? In 70 years? Maybe less than that. Don't believe the hype, folks. That's all this is. Just a bunch of hogwash hype. There's nothing scientific about this article. There's no numbers in here. There's no proof that this was the highest temperature week ever. Nothing in here is talking about what the temperatures were. It just says warmer than usual temperatures. Nothing about numbers. No raw data. No links to anything. Nothing. Has a link to the National Snow and Data Ice. And guess what, guys? All this is like a FAQ. That's it. No raw numbers, just more hypothetical propaganda about man-made global warming. Absolutely unreal. So I just want to bring it to your attention, all these hype articles about warming, but they don't provide you with raw data. And guys, I do my best to make sure you guys have raw data to go look at when we make these claims of Arctic sea ice. How strong, how weak, where to go to look at it, what are the numbers really? Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to point that out. Both poles have peak ice and peak melt. And right now we're in the peak melt season, like we should be in Antarctica. And like we see here, that was September, right at the end of summer. Like right now we're at the end of summer in the southern hemisphere, and this is the strongest sea ice in February all year long. Obviously, it's going to be the strongest when it's the coldest of the year. Goodness grief. All right, let's take a look at some weather real quick, guys. We were supposed to do a report this morning. However, I was not able to do that. I apologize. Bad boy that I am. Wind chill temperatures across the area. Well, right now they're pretty comfortable. The Northeast still cold. Northern Plain and Great Lakes also freezing. That frost freeze line, well, that's going to go further south than we believe this morning. I know we woke up to -2 degrees Fahrenheit here in upstate New York. Temperatures today, well, they just weren't that warm out unless you lived in southern Florida. Temperatures tonight, overnight, cold. 20s, teens, 30s for much of us here in the lower 48. And taking a look at NOAA's extended look. Yeah, beautiful day out there, folks. Dry except for you, those in southwest corner of the United States. California getting some rain today. California getting rain tomorrow as well. And I saw a funny article on Weather Channel how it's talking about how California is returning to drought conditions, even though their reservoirs are above average. And then by the time we get here to, it looks like Sunday, some action starts to begin across the United States. We've got rain in the southern parts of the states, ice in the northern parts, in the Midwest, the northern plains, snow to the northwest, dry in the northeast. So let's take a look at tropical tidbits, shall we? We'll turn this off first. How about that? There we go. Look at the clouds, everyone. Look at the clouds. All right, so starting from today, high pressure system dominating the weather across the United States. A low pressure forms in the four corners, bringing a storm across the United States, mainly rain across the most parts. Snow in the northwest and the northern plains behind this system. And then you'll see some snow to the northern edge of this storm as it heads into the northeast. Michigan, Illinois, parts of Indiana, Wisconsin will see the snow from this. Mostly a rain event for the northeast except for Vermont, New Hampshire, parts into Toronto, Ontario. And then it stays rain on February 27th on Thursday, but then we see a transition to all snow. Heavy snow for the capital region of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. This was that nor'easter that we were watching. It didn't turn into a nor'easter, and it is bringing snow to the northeast. And each time we see this thing, it was further west. Now it's trekking back to the east. I still think the I-95 corridor could still see some accumulating snow, not just, but it's going to be further north, guys. And unfortunately, actually looking at this model, I mean, this system may just all be rain once again for the I-95. So I thought we were going to have a pretty good chance at some snow. There's still time. We got about a week before this system hits. But right now it looks like mainly the inland parts like New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine are going to get the majority of this snow. According to GFS, this could be a significant event. Anywhere from 6 to 10 inches of snow could be possible for folks in this region. And then that system moves out. It's pretty dry again. Pretty quiet. March 1st. Pretty quiet. A quick clipper system of snow moving into upstate New York by the 2nd of March. Not much really happening. Another system sweeps down from Canada, bringing snow to the northeast, rain to the south, and that system quickly dissipates and moves away. Lake effect snow expected by March 5th. And really, guys, it's going to stay cold in the northeast, warm and mild and dry for the most part in the south. So thankfully, there is a break for you guys in the south with all this rain that you've had. We've tracked many systems. And right now, the GFS has got a lot of high pressure. So really, we've got one more system to watch, and that's the one that we're currently looking at. This will be here by Monday across the south again. And guys, it's going to stay kind of quiet, but don't expect it to stay that long for too long, honestly. Winter is not over just yet. There are some predictions that are going to show us the cold temperatures through March and into late March, potentially early April. Take a look at temperatures right here. Cold dipping all the way far south. A little bit of a mild ridge here for the first part of the next week in the northeast. And then that Arctic air starting to intrude once again to the lower 48. Temperatures in the freezing marks by Thursday of next week in the south. And then once again, Arctic conditions will return to the Northeast, upstate New York, the Great Lakes, upper part of Michigan, Interlochen, Traverse City, Wisconsin as well, Minnesota, very cold air. Looks like, guys, the northern plains, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast are still going to be dealing with winter well into March. And then we have another giant cold air mass coming in from Canada. And guys, this is not typical March weather here for the North and Northeast. So some of you are fighting for those springtime temperatures. They're on their way, but old man winter has one more say in it before we finally look. We're seeing some pretty Arctic cold air for Northern Plains, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and the Northeast all the way through the second week of March. This trend could continue until the end of March into April. So hang on to your hats. We still got more snow to follow. According to this pattern here, it looks like we have some cold air, 2 shots of really cold air on the way, and one now in February, and then another one in the second week of March. So winter not over by any means, folks. Stay tuned to see what happens next for sure. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. There will be no show tomorrow as Mari and I are going to make it official. We will be Mr. and Mrs. Riley after 2 p.m. on Saturday, February 22nd, 2020. Very special date for us, by the way. I'm sure we'll get into that someday with you guys, but please like and share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Join our membership or our Patreon. Until next time, folks, we will talk soon. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Take care.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.